What if I told you that high in the Andes, long before European contact, the Inca Empire may have held a far more complex view of love and gender than we imagine? Spanish chronicles describe rituals and temple attendants who lived outside traditional gender roles. Some accounts mention male partners serving in sacred ceremonies, while ancient art shows figures that seem to blur the line between man and woman. Yet, much of what we know comes through the eyes of conquistadors, men who called anything unfamiliar a sin. So what was real and what was rewritten to fit colonial morals? Were these traces of acceptance or fragments distorted by conquest? The truth remains buried beneath stone and silence. Drop the time you're watching Morning Midnight or somewhere in between. And if you love history that challenges what we think we know, hit subscribe. No pressure, but the next story takes us even deeper into the hidden past of the Andes. Now, let's begin. If the sun crowns an empire, what happens in the shadows, it casts. You wake into Cusco's thin, honey-bright morning, where stones fit so tightly. A knife can't start a rumor, and the Sapa Inca stands as Inti's living sun, while the city inhales on schedule. Trumpets nip the air, runners snap across the Capac Yan with news and salted meat priests in the Coricancha. Read the sky like accountants. Duty is choreography, Ailu, First Empire second. Yet even perfect choreography has wings tucked under the cloak. Have you noticed how every workplace family or bus line develops a second script? The one people actually live by when the supervisor looks away. Here, the public script favors symmetry. The Koya beside the Inca paired. Halves in textiles, festivals, tuned to solstice and harvest. The private script favors competence and care. The state counts blankets, terraces, and Labor Days. It doesn't tally every breath shared after curfew. Order matters. Roads don't build themselves, but order leaves seams where ordinary tenderness keeps the cold from winning. A sentry passes a better cloak to the partner who shivers harder. A mason shows an apprentice the trick that saves a wrist in rainy season. That's not spectacle. It's survival with a soft voice. Empire loves labels, warehouse, granary, garrison. Yet intimacy here is mostly unlabeled. You won't find a quippy you category for everything two adults choose to be for each other. The expectation is simpler. Be loyal. Do your work. Keep ceremonies steady. Within those walls, people tilt toward whoever feels like home. On a terrace path above the city, two adolescents lean shoulder to shoulder, ordinary as stones, and you catch that half second when weight trades sides. No decree addresses it, no sermon needs to. It's the quiet current running beneath the big river. Listen at the base of Sacsayhuaman, and you can hear water moving through hidden channels, private rivers threading public rock. That's the balance you step into. A civilization that prizes fit and finish while trusting households to handle the small weather of the heart. Not indulgence, not scandal craft. The same patience that seats a polygonal block finds its way into how companions share coca jokes and watch posts through a long night. If you were here on a festival day, you'd applaud the symmetry. If you stayed past sundown, you'd understand the seams. You already felt the two currents of this place. Big public river, small private stream. So now, you get the simple words. people here use to keep both moving Yanantin and Aini. Don't worry about fancy definitions. Think of Yanantin as two different things that fit like sun and shade, mountain and valley, or two people whose strengths click together. And Aini is just, I help you today, you help me tomorrow. If you've ever swapped chores with a roommate or traded school runs with a neighbor, you've practiced Aini without calling it anything special. Start with Yanantin. The Andes doesn't chase perfect sameness. It loves good fit. Look at the terrace walls hugging the slope, stone-shaped to stone curve, meeting curve. Households try to work the same way. The poster version is a pair running a home. One handles fields and outside duties. The other handles garden animals weaving. But that's just the poster. Real life is messier and kinder. An aunt moves in after a loss. Two brothers run a field better as a team than apart. A widow brings in a younger helper, and the two keep the place humming. The point isn't romance or labels. The point is balance, so the day doesn't wobble. Then Aini steps in. It's the quiet rule underneath everything. You show up for me, I show up for you. I carry your water jars when you're tired. Next week, you take my watch when I'm coughing. Not a ledger, not a guilt trip, more like a rhythm. Who in your life shows up before you ask? That's your Aini person. Whether you call them cousin coworker or something you keep private because naming it would make it smaller than it feels. Now picture the Aielu, the big family network around you. It mostly cares that seeds get planted, canals get cleared, offerings reach the little hilltop shrines, and no one drops the ball when it's festival day. The state looks for the same kind of order. At scale, the work crews show up, the warehouses stay full, the calendar keeps ticking. Neither the neighbors nor the officials stand at your door, making a spreadsheet of who you hug or who you share a blanket with. They look at results. Are the fields neat? Are you reliable? Do you keep the beat when the drums start? If the answer is yes, most folks let your private life stay private. You see this in the Amida crews during the dry season. Lines of workers move. Stones pass baskets, sing to keep time. In a group like that, you naturally find your person, the one who hands you a rock at the exact second you need it. Who knows when your back is about to give? Who drags you into the shade and then drags you back out before a foreman notices? The boss sees productivity. You feel we fit. At night, those pairs often turn into little households inside the bigger camp. 2 bowls, 2 cloaks, 2 jokes nobody else laughs at. Call it friendship, if that keeps everything smooth. The Andes cares less about your label than about the fact that tomorrow the wall will be 3 rows higher. There's also a cousin idea to Yanantin. People sometimes mention Massentin like meets like. 2 weavers with the same eye for tension. 2 runners with the same long stride. You've lived this. Think of the co-worker whose pace matches yours. Massentin explains the click. Aini keeps it going. Yanantin gives it shape so the rest of life stays balanced. Stack those 3 together, and you get a culture that expects bonds, whatever you call them, to be practical, mutual, and steady. Let's walk through a few doorways. In one house, a widow and her younger helper move around each other like a well-rehearsed dance. She knows the timings for the oven. He knows when to pull water before the line forms. They split work share food and borrow extra hands only for big jobs. and another two herders share a high pasture. One wakes early and makes the hottest mash you've ever tasted. The other takes the colder night watches without complaint. They come back to the village with fat llamas and fewer stories of coyotes. People notice results, not pillow talk. In a potter's yard, a master and an apprentice sleep near the kiln, heads opposite, feet barely touching breathing clay dust, and trading tricks that keep fingers safe from quick heat. Over time, their tools become ours, not mine and yours. The neighbors don't ask for definitions. They ask for mugs that don't crack. Do lines exist that you're not supposed to cross? Sure. Every place has them. Here, the sharpest trouble isn't about two adults taking care of each other. It's about skipping sacred duties, stealing, refusing work, or disrespecting a major shrine. That's when punishments get real. But quiet companionship that keeps a household strong. Most eyes slide past it. Why poke holes in the boat that gets everyone across the river? You'll even see the logic in festivals. Big days need pairs and trios to move. Litters pass cups, keep fires going. Manage the flow of people. Being totally alone during a festival feels like showing up to move a couch without a buddy. You can try, but it's going to be awkward and slow. So communities make space for adopted kin, ritual siblings, and chosen companions. So no one carries sacred logistics solo. Have you ever been the odd one out until a friend said, "Come with me? We've got a two-person job," and suddenly you felt like you belonged? That's the mood. Mood here, just with more drums and better hats. Let's bring it closer to your life now. Think of the person who remembers your coffee order, who texts you home safe without making it a big deal, who quietly fixed your sink while you were at work. You might not put a romantic label on that, or maybe you would. Either way, you know the feeling, steady, useful kind. In Cusco, the compliments are practical. Two fresh bread left warm at your door, a repaired strap waiting by your shoes, a water jar filled before anyone says a word. The empire notices the ripple calmer. Households, cleaner terraces. Fewer arguments that endanger planting day. So when people here talk about Yanatin and Aini, they're not trying to be deep or mysterious. They're just describing how to stay alive and decent at high altitude with frost stares and deadlines. Whatever two adults share, work, shelter, warmth, the real test is simple. Do you balance each other? And do you take turns giving? If yes, the community sees strength, not scandal. And in a place that builds roads across mountains, strength is the language everyone understands. You step out of the noisy street and into temple quiet. Sandals, hushed stone cools your breath, and the Coricancha sun's great house feels like a calm heart. Big titles exist here. The high priest, people call him the Wilak Umu, rows of attendants, and a small army of helpers. But most days aren't fireworks. They're early bells, long shifts, and a lot of careful hands doing small things right. Backstage work builds closeness fast. You sweep courtyards before dew dries warm an altar cloth between your palms, and learn which door sticks unless you lift it first. A senior attendant pulls you into his rhythm, the way a good cook pulls a new line partner up to speed. No speeches, just stand here. Pass that, breathe. Hours stretch, so you eat together, share coca. When jaws tense, and nap on the same mat during festival weeks. If you've ever closed a cafe with someone who could read a rush by ear, You know how two people become a team without making it a big deal. Temple specialists move in pairs too. Healers folks call them Hampek read fevers like mechanics read engine noise. Ritual guides, sometimes called Pacos, walk families through offerings so hard feelings don't spill. Older and younger work shoulder to shoulder, one hand steady, one learning. The bond starts as training and turns into something like home base. Have you had that mentor who saved you from your worst habit with a joke and a raised eyebrow? That's the feeling. People love to talk about the Axelawasi, the chosen women houses for weaving and ceremony, and yes, they matter. But look beside the headline, and you'll see the men's dorms, narrow side rooms, and night watches where attendants quietly sort into pairs. They share a basin, a comb, a roll of clean bandage that passes back and forth without a scorecard. When one is sick, the other covers the incense table and pretends the day wasn't twice as long. No quipu records it. People just notice the lamps never go out. Some shifts pull you to hilltop shrines, waka, where wind likes to carry offerings off if you're not careful. You go with a partner, because two hands steady the bundle better than one. The road talk starts light, a stub-toe story, a song your mother sings to guinea pigs' thunder, making water taste like metal. Night brings cold, so you share a cloak edge and the last dry twigs. You keep a thumbnail flame alive between you, not because it's dramatic, but because relighting is twice the work. Rules, of course. Don't steal offerings. Don't skip turns. Don't fake signs from the gods to dodge a hard job. But there isn't a clipboard for feelings. Officials care that the calendar runs on time and the precinct stays steady. If two men keep each other anchored so the herbs are ground before the crowd arrives and the priest reaches back to find the right vessel already there, most eyes leave that alone. Publicly, you call it friendship, if that keeps the air smooth. Privately, you know the rhythm one lifts while the other steadies. Then you trade. Festival days. Inti Raymi and the rest depend on this quiet teamwork. The high priest doesn't look over his shoulder before stepping up. He trusts someone set the platform. That trust comes from 100 tiny rescues you don't announce. You place the heavy jar on the side with a wobble. Your partner anchors it with a thumb and a calm face, so the front row never knows. Later, when you fight a yawn on night watch, he stretches the silence with a soft chant you can hum along to without waking the neighborhood. Every temple has pairs people tease without malice. Relax, those two will be here before the bell. It's a compliment in disguise. You two make the place safer. A traveler from far away may raise an eyebrow at the loyalty. The old hands shrug. Do the mats roll on time? Do the offerings arrive whole, then pass the broom? Sometimes roles blur at festivals. You might wear a mask you don't usually wear, or step into the other half of a dance. It's not pretend, it's balance training. For a moment, you feel the world from the other side, and your shoulders loosen. That taste of balance can also tell your heart what it already knows: you work better and live easier with the same steady person at your side. When dusk spills back into the street, you glance behind and see two attendants checking a last doorway, shoulder to shoulder, moving like one person with four hands. No label needed. Tomorrow, the lamps will still be burning, because in the middle of the night, two people kept a promise I'll hold if you lift. They call them chosen. But you learn quickly. Being chosen cuts both ways. Inside a noble compound, wide courtyards, blind corners, doorways that swallow sound, you move among Yanakuna, the hand-picked attendants who step out of ordinary village life to serve a lord or a royal house. Panaka. Chosen here means pulled from your home network and attached directly to power. You cook, carry guard fetch, manage errands, keep the schedule tight. In return, you get steady rations, clothing sometimes, a plot to use, and the kind of protection that makes guards step aside when you say, "He asked for this." Daylight work looks simple. You keep the Lord's sandals clean, the travel bag ready, the coca, measured the visitors arranged by importance so nobody loses face. But the real job is rhythm. You read moods close doors, at the right second place, a cloak on shoulders before a shiver announces itself. You don't need to know law to understand power. You need to know when to make a room smaller or bigger with a single step. Ever had a boss whose entire day turned on? Whether you slid a glass of water across the table during a tense call? That. Some Yanakuna are village smart fixers. Some are quiet wall shadows. A few are funny on purpose to diffuse heat. You pair up naturally. One remembers names and small debts. The other reads faces like weather. Together, you get a household through a festival week without a fight. In that togetherness, bonds grow. The empire doesn't pin labels on what two attendants are to each other. The household judges by outcomes did. The Lord arrive composed. The visitors feel respected. The storeroom stay honest. If yes, people let private life stay private. You see how a bond gets built. Travel days are the strongest glue. Noble parties move fast along the Kapak Nyan runners out front, porters behind cooks, a valley ahead warming pots. Nights are thin and cold in the way Highland nights always are. You split a blanket because it's efficient, pass a last strip of charqui, because pretend gallantry won't keep anyone warm, and wake in the dark to check each other's feet for numb spots. In the morning, you move like a two-person machine. One packs, one smooths the details nobody praises until they fail. Power has a human center, and you orbit it closely. In a Karaka local lord house, the big family wives, children, in-laws, cousins makes a living calendar of needs. The way to keep that calendar friendly is steady attendants who share a private language of glances and half words. Older servants remember a time under Pachacuti. Younger ones came up during Huayna Capac. Stories travel with bowls and jackets which governor liked his sandals warmed, which royal aunt could forgive any mistake except lateness. When a new attendant arrives, you pull him into the pace. He breathes easier because you stand at his shoulder, and before long, he falls in step with you, not with a rule book. Do households police affection? They police failure. Miss a ritual break. A trust steal from the storehouse, expect trouble. But two attendants who cover each other's weak spots and sleep easier back to back after a hard day. Most people see that and think, good, we will make it through planting and festival season. The worst thing in a noble house is public embarrassment. The best thing is a pair everyone can count on to be early, neat, invisible when needed, immovable when a guest pushes past a boundary. The word Yanakuna will outlive the empire. Later, Spaniards will use it for indigenous retainers working Spanish estates. That afterlife tells you something the role is useful because it runs on trust, and trust sticks. In the Inca moment you're walking through it also means distance from your old Ilu. You're tied to a lord's orbit now, not your village's. That can feel like promotion and loneliness at the same time. So you build your small household inside the big 1-2 bowls on a shelf, 2 cloaks drying near a brazier, a small joke you hand back and forth on bad days. Privacy protects tenderness. Here, more than permission does. Thick walls, inner gardens, night watches at far corners. These make pockets where talk becomes low and honest. You've felt this before on business trips, late closings, hospital overnights. Long hours turn coworkers into something steadier. In Cusco, that steady thing is judged by its footprint. Do you two make the house safer? Do you calm the air before the Lord walks in? Do you keep a list in your heads so the Quipu keeper can sleep? If you're wondering whether the elite ever noticed how close some pairs became, of course they did. They noticed and then decided whether closeness served order. As long as it did teasing, stayed gentle. Send those two. The job will be done and the doors kept opening for you. One day, you carry a message that needed to arrive without noise. The next, you ride ahead to smooth a tense visit because your face opens rooms. Power remembers who made it look graceful, and the two of you remember every step that got you there, right down to who tucked the wool under whose chin on the coldest night. Myths here don't sit in glass cases. They walk the streets on festival days. You hear them in simple lines. The sun and moon are a pair, yes, but they argue, chase, hide, make up. Mountains are siblings who hold hands so fields don't slide away. Lakes are old spirits who prefer gifts to gossip. The stories teach balance by showing how easily it tips. You don't need footnotes to get it. Just watch a cloud move across a terrace and feel how cool and warm share the same stone. Some tales love transformation. A traveler. Jagulda. People say Viracocha crosses the highlands in a plain cloak tests hospitality and changes shapes when needed old young man something else. The lesson land's soft appearance is a tool, not a prison. Another story follows a fox who plays bride to cross a ravine, or a condor who takes a human partner to teach them the wind. Whether the teller names names or not, the point is simple. The world runs on fit, not on rigid boxes. Festivals turn that truth into practice. Masks let you put on another face without lying. Costumes let your body borrow another role for a day. A quiet farmer wears a mother's shawl, not to mock, but to carry the other half of the dance, then returns to his fields with a better sense of how weight shifts in a 2-person job. A fierce herder plays a shy maiden in a skit, then laughs afterward, because he didn't know his voice could land that gently. Have you ever covered a co-worker's role for a week and suddenly respected how hard their easy tasks were? Same lesson, but with drums. Some ritual roles make the point more directly. In the highlands around Huarochiri, people once spoke of Kwari-Warmi male-female specialists who served a powerful feline spirit called Chuki Chinche. The title wasn't an insult. It was a job description. These were the folks you called when two sides needed a bridge, families in a feud, neighbors sharing a spring, couples out of rhythm. They wore mixed clothing at times because their work was mixed work, walking the line between categories, so other people didn't fall off it. If you've seen a friend who can talk hot tempers down without taking sides, you've seen the same gift. You catch the feel of it during a night ceremony. Two singers face each other, one carrying a low line, the other floating above it. Then they trade without warning, and the harmony doesn't break. A boy takes the flute part usually played by an aunt. An older man borrows the sash of a daughter for a blessing. No one nudges, no one snickers. The village is busy holding its balance, and balance means letting people stand where the song needs them. When the fire snaps, you half expect the sparks to arrange themselves into a little paired dance. That's how baked in the idea feels. Even small rites echo the theme. A couple planting their first field will each start a furrow, then swap plows midway as a joke. That isn't a joke grinning, because the lines match up better after they trade. At a canal, cleaning a women's task bucket line finishes faster after two men jump in at the narrow spot and find out their wrists are good for more than shovels. Later, when a reenactment troupe puts on a skit that needs a bride, the tallest man steps forward, ties on a shawl, and turns solemn for the 10 minutes the role asks for. People clap because he did it cleanly, not because he looked funny. Myth here is a mirror that forgives you for looking different when the work requires it. You step into a character, and the village reads your intention. Are you serving balance or chasing attention? The ones who serve balance become trusted. Over time, they are the ones asked to carry the delicate words, to sit between chairs when talks get tight, to stand at the corner of a ritual where a half step the wrong way could muddle the whole day. If you grew up on stories that fix people to one label each, this can feel loose. But the Andes isn't loose. It's exact in a different way. It asks, what keeps the terrace up the song in tune, the family talking, the harvest on time? If that answer means letting a body or a voice cross a line for a night, the line bends and the sky doesn't fall. You watch a dancer hand his mask to a friend and see both of them smile like they just remembered where the center is. Road dust tastes the same in every army, and you taste plenty of it here. Marchers move in tidy blocks, spears on shoulders, slings looped at the wrist, shields thumping thighs. The Empire loves order, even in war. Tens, hundreds, thousands. In the road network, the Kapakbang Gan feeds camps like a long conveyor belt. Grain from one town, sandals from the next, extra slings from a third. None of that runs without pairs and small teams of the same quiet pattern you've been seeing since the plaza at dawn. You learn the camp from the inside out. Way stations Tampas give you water and a roof. The rest you earn with your feet. Tents are simple windbreaks. Fires sit low and mean. Nights get cold fast. You and your tent mate share heat because pride doesn't block frost. One keeps the embers, the other checks the llama line. You trade without a speech. My turn to fetch water, your turn to repair sandal ties, both of us keeping watch when the captain's shadow stretches past the fire. Ask any firefighter, delivery driver, or night shift nurse today. This is the hour when strangers become partners. Drill makes you close. Sling teams practice until the rhythm is a heartbeat load spin loose again. Shield pairs learn to step in and out so neither side opens a gap. A veteran shows you the trick for reading a hillside, the dark patch that's a bog, the shine that's loose gravel, the shadow that hides a ditch. You thank him with coca leaves, and by catching a mistake before it becomes a bruise. That kind of help feels small until it saves an ankle or your pride. Then it feels like a door you both agree not to close. The officers care about results lines, steady supplies on time. No panic when a hillside throws stones at you for fun. They don't take attendance on feelings. If two men make a squad calmer, hit their marks, and keep jokes light enough to bleed tension without cutting trust, the captain is thrilled. He will send that pair to tricky spots, because tricky spots want rhythm more than heroics. You've seen this at modern jobs too. The manager always taps the duo that finishes quietly and right. Marching teaches you a person's inside weather. Who hums when the climb gets mean? Who gets quiet before a storm? Who spots trouble on a face before it turns into a fist? Affection grows out of that map. You are not writing poems to each other. You are trading real favors that land when they should. A strip of charqui placed in a shaking hand. A shoulder offered wordlessly on the steepest steps. A shared blanket edge that doesn't need discussion. Call it brotherhood if that keeps plumes unruffled. Call it love if you're willing to admit the obvious to yourself. Either way, it works. There are camp customs that make bonds formal without saying too much. Two tent mates swap small tokens before a hard march, your braid thread around my wrist, my lucky knot on your sling thong little anchors that say, I'm tuned to you. Before a risky scout, you touch helmets, not dramatic, just once, the way people now knock knuckles at a factory door and then go in. After you check each other's shins first, then the rest of the squad. The order says a lot. Battle days hit like weather. Sling stones fly first meaner than they look. You hear one whistle near your ear and feel your partner tug you half a step left without thinking. In the crush shield pairs turtle and pivot a two-body hinge. When the call to pull back comes, it's not a debate. Your feet go on their own because you already agreed silently and long ago that neither of you will play lone hero and leave the other counting ghosts. Logistics binds you as much as danger. Long waits at ravines turn into whispered stories. You trade family memories like rations, what your father taught you about the first rain, how your aunt could braid, while walking the dumbest thing you did at 12. You learn the tilt of each other's moods and start keeping a private calendar. He gets sharp when he's hungry. I crack jokes before dawn. We both need quiet after a fight, even if we won. Small knowledge like that is its own armor. Do lines exist? Yeah, stealing from a tampu will break your life faster than a bad fall. Disobeying in a fight is a cold road. But two adults who keep each other steady, who return from patrol with the same number of heads they left with, and help the young ones lace up courage in the dark, draw nods, not lectures. Older soldiers see themselves in you and look away on purpose. They remember. And when campaigns end, the pattern doesn't. Some pairs stay on as garrison, some walk home side by side, some move into service together in a governor's house. Wherever you land, people notice the same thing. Jobs finish cleaner when you're assigned as a set. Send those two, someone says, and the room relaxes because they know how this story tends to go. You pack one bundle between, you check the knots, and step off without counting. That's the whole point. You already did the counting night after night and chose each other. They didn't just bring steel and horses, they brought a brand new set of eyes. When the Spaniards arrive, shock travels faster than their cavalry. What looks normal to you, paired work festival, masks, temple teamwork, warm companionship, on cold nights, looks strange, even wrong to men, trained to sort the world by a different rule book. Soldiers write reports. Priests write letters. Everyone writes as if the Andes needs correcting. Overnight, the same gestures that kept lamps lit and terraces steady get recast as something to hunt. Chronicles start doing a neat trick with words. They praise Inca order, the roads, the storehouses, the clean cities, and then slide into moral thunder about sins they claim to see everywhere. A healer in mixed clothing becomes a scare story. A festival role that swaps garments becomes a disorder. Two attendants who move like one person become a warning tale. You know that feeling when a stranger walks into your kitchen and declares your family routines improper without learning what they're for. Multiply that by an empire. Law follows the pen. The conquerors pack Iberian ideas into Andean air, old Spanish statutes against sodomy church rules about who may live with whom, and heavy suspicion toward any ritual that blends roles. By the 1500s, courts in the new colonies have fresh reasons to drag people in. Missionaries preach extirpation of idolatry, rooting out local worship, and anything they don't understand gets shoved under that label shrine. Visits masks, gender-bending festival roles, close pairs who keep a household tight. If a practice helped your village hold its balance, that was the very thing most likely to be targeted. Punishments change the weather of daily life. Public shaming appears where a quiet look used to suffice. Confessionals turn private whispers into paperwork. Officials ask questions you've never had to answer out loud, and then write your hesitations into the record as guilt. Even if your town never sees a dramatic trial, the new climate fears scrutiny. The buzz of rumor does its work. Doors close sooner, jokes get shorter. Those pairs everyone used to gently tease, people stop teasing. They stop talking at all. The Spanish also changed job titles. Yanacuna, once proud, chosen attendants get folded into colonial estates as Yanacona's retainers under Spanish power. Some keep status. Many lose the protection of their old networks. New masters care about output more than the kind of quiet trust you and your partner built in a lord's house. At the same time, the state pushes people into reductionist planned towns meant to be easier to tax and to monitor. The design cleans up maps and muddies lives' new neighbors, fewer private pockets, more watchful eyes. Festivals feel the pressure first because they're visible. Masks and role swaps that once taught balance become evidence. Priests insist on cutting or Christianizing parts of the dances. You still carry litters and pass cups in pairs because physics hasn't changed, but you do it with your shoulders tighter and your laughs smaller. A ritual specialist who used to bridge conflicts. Someone like the Kwarawami you heard about finds fewer invitations and more questions at the church door. The village loses a pressure valve and pretends not to notice, and yet people adapt because people always do. The same skill that built terraces out of raw hillside now builds cover. Bonds tuck themselves deeper into family rooms and work crews. The words change. Publicly, you're cousins, roommates, partners in a trade. Privately, you do what you have always done. Share load, share warmth, trade turns at watch. Keep each other from breaking on hard days. Marriages, some heartfelt, some strategic, appear where they must. You learn new rhythms for saying we without saying it. Older folks become living archives. They remember a time when affection didn't need careful packaging. They teach a new habit. Keep the quipu of your heart in your head, not on the wall. A wink replaces a joke. A shared tool replaces a shared word. When a missionary rails from a pulpit, the crowd nods and then quietly checks who needs bread that week. If you've ever worked under a boss who didn't get how your team actually functions, you know this dance outward compliance, inward maintenance. Some chronicles brag that they stamped everything out, but walk the alleys at dusk and watch who carries whose cloak, who waits just inside a doorway while the other finishes a task, who shows up first when the bell rings. The pattern refuses to die because the need it meets two people holding each other upright hasn't changed. The empire of the sun is gone. A new flag flies. The human fix remains. Hooks fade. Laws shift. Uniforms change color. You still count the same way at night. One for you, one for me, one for tomorrow. Whatever name the new rules give it, you know what it is by how it steadies your hands. Colonial paper tries to make feelings sit still. It loves tidy lines, names, ages confessed, denied. But life wriggles. You see it in trial notes and priest reports where the most human parts show up sideways. Two men found sharing a room. Excessive closeness in the kitchen, costumes contrary to modesty. The ink is loud. The details whisper. A judge records that one man would not sleep unless the other returned. That isn't a crime story. That's a bedtime routine. You learn the new code words fast. Amistad, particular, a particular friendship. Demasiado cariño, too much fondness. Hábito sospechoso, a suspicious habit. These phrases keep the file neat and the village breathing. A notary writes co-residence for reasons of work, and everyone understands he just gave two people room to stay together without inviting a sermon. The safest label of all is kin cousins, godbrothers, sons of the same house. Godparent, ties compadrazgo, become a bridge between private loyalty and public cover. If you've ever told a nosy landlord, "We split rent, that's all," while exchanging a look, only your person understands you know the move. Objects start carrying the messages. Words can't. A shared spindle with both initials cut small under the rim. A match to your partner's sash pattern woven in a border no one else notices. Twin wooden cups in a cupboard where there should be one. Textiles are perfect for this because cloth already speaks in signs, diamonds for water steps, for mountains, paired bands for partnership. A weaver can tuck a secret into a hem the way you tuck a joke into a text thread. The cloth says what the mouth can't risk. Household layouts help too. In reductiones, those planned towns, the new streets run straight, but old habits bend around corners. If two cousins share a back room near the oven, that's efficient. If they take turns on the night watch and always return together, that's responsible. If one buys salt and the other buys peppers, and somehow the soup always tastes right, the ledger calls it budgeting. You keep the lamp lit the way you used to in the temple, not for show, for warmth and work. Festivals adapt without dying. A dance step that once swapped roles now gets framed as just theater, and the village nods. Masks still move, only the jokes get quieter. A healer who used to wear mixed elements now keeps them under a cloak until the last minute, then does the necessary work and puts everything away again. You don't argue with the priest. You simply shift the timing so the priest arrives after the delicate part has passed. The balance lesson remains just taught in a lower voice. Chronicles brag about extirpation, but keep bumping into human facts. One record scolds that a pair persisted despite warnings, and all you can hear is the persistence. Another complains that neighbors refuse to testify, which translates to the network protected its own. Old women become masters of the shrug. They keep a neat house, one says. He makes good soup, another adds. Men give blank answers that are actually shields. We were at the canal. We were fetching wood. We were praying. None of it is dramatic, which is exactly why it works. The quipu of memory moves off the wall and into people. Songs that used to be loud at dusk become hums in kitchens. A nickname replaces a label. A borrowed tool replaces a promise said out loud. When a missionary preaches against old customs, someone coughs, someone drops a spoon, and the moment slides by like a small stone into a big river. Later, bread appears on a doorstep that needed it. Later still, a shawl gets draped over shoulders that shook during the sermon. Nobody signs a document for that. Not everything survives. Some roles, like the open public bridge work of people we'd call quarry warmy, get squeezed to the edge or erased on paper. But the skill that made those roles valuable doesn't vanish. It moves. The conflict smoother becomes the person both sides happen to meet at the market. The balance keeper becomes the uncle who can sit between chairs and make a family eat in the same room again. When you need delicate words, you still send for the one who can hold two truths in the same sentence. If you laid all this on a map, it would look like water in dry season, gone from the surface, running quiet underneath. Codes, small objects, careful. Timing, protective, neighbors, straight faces, inside jokes. This is the toolkit. It doesn't feel heroic. It feels like keeping a lamp from fluttering out when a door opens. You and your person keep doing the ordinary things that matter. Roll the mat tie, the sandals, pack the lunch fold, the cloak. Paper shouts erased. The kitchen answers with soup for two. You start noticing the leftovers, the little things that outlive big rules. A shawl border that repeats in pairs when one stripe would do. A song at dusk shaped for two voices even when one person is sweeping alone. A story told by a grandmother that begins with a mountain and ends with a kitchen table. Echoes aren't loud, they're stubborn. Textiles talk first because cloth here is a second language. You run a thumb over a poncho edge and feel twins band diamond step. A weaver explains it like whether things work better in twos and keeps beating the pattern into place. Left, right. Some pieces hide a private joke, 2 tiny birds stitched near the hem where only the wearer knows. Others are practical, like paired loops on a travel bag, so 2 hands can lift it evenly. The message is always balance that moves. Do you have a scarf or bracelet whose pattern means something only to you and one other person? Stories do the same work. In one village, an old tale follows 2 herders who trade night watch without counting. The fox, annoyed, tries to trick them into arguing and fails because each wakes early to relieve the other. Children laugh at the fox and adults hear the moral take turns and nothing can split you. In another, a mountain spirit blesses a household because the 2 souls keeping this fire never let the pot boil dry. No sermon required. You hear the message and glance at the person who always tops up your kettle. Rituals adjust, but keep their bones. A dance that once swapped clothing now swaps roles only for a verse, just long enough to make the point, then resets before anyone's notebook can fill with complaints. The old community task of canal cleaning still ends with paired thanks. 2 cups, 2 toasts, 2 lines of the same chant. Even when a priest delivers new words over the blessing, people answer in a rhythm older than the church's key. The river keeps its path because the banks remember it. Objects carry memory, like pockets carry heat. A pair of wooden spoons, slightly mismatched from years of use, live in the same gourd bowl. A knife handle shows 2 woven wraps spliced together, not pretty but effective. A spindle whorl bears 2 initials and dots under a swirl no one else notices. None of these are museum pieces. They're just daily tools that refuse to be single. Walk a market and you'll see echoes priced into the goods. 2-bar looms hum beside each other as if they're trading jokes. A stall sells clay mugs in 2s without explaining why, and when you ask, the vendor shrugs. Soup tastes better that way. You buy them because you know exactly who will hold the other one and exactly how the steam will fog their face on the first cold night. Songs know the shape of companionship too. A work tune from the high fields sits low for the first line and lifts for the next built for call and response, even if one person sings both parts alone while shelling peas. A lullaby uses a rocking phrase that only relaxes when an echo returns from across the room. This is music you don't perform. It's music that keeps your hands moving without dropping the bowl. Some echoes wear humor as a shield. A pair of cousins in a village theater troupe always play gatekeepers together, bickering like an old married duo and bowing in sync at the end. People clap because the timing is perfect, and timing is another name for trust. A carpenter marks beams with twin notches so his partner can find the right piece in a pile without shouting across the yard. The foreman thinks it's efficiency. It is also affection with sawdust on it. Travel higher, and the wind strips fancy off everything. You pass a hillside shrine with 2 flat stones set side by side, each with a neat circle of corn on top. No plaque, no lesson, just a pair. Someone left them before dawn, and someone else will know exactly what was meant and smile into their scarf. On the trail back down, you see a young couple carrying a baby, and right behind them, 2 older men carrying a heavy bundle together at the same pace. Everybody gets where they're going because nobody tries to carry the whole road alone. If you've ever looked around your home and spotted the paired things, a second toothbrush, the mug that only your person uses, shoes waiting by the door that make you feel calmer just seeing them, you already understand why these echoes matter. They are proof that even when the language changes and rules rearrange the furniture, the house still remembers who shares the key. The sun doesn't need permission to rise, and you don't need permission to remember. You come back to the sacred valley with a pocket full of small proofs, paired. Stitches, twin spoons, the way. Two voices make a work song feel easier, and you meet people who are stitching those proofs into the present. A teacher in Urubamba starts class with 2 words on the board, yanantinaini, then lets kids explain them with real-life chores. I grind corn, my brother fetches water. A weaver in Chinchero runs her fingers along a border and says, 2 bands, so the cloth won't twist, and then smiles because everyone hears the double meaning. A young guide in Cusco points at the cathedral, then at the Inca walls beneath it, and says softly, both stand. That's our trick. You notice how today's Quechua voices turn old balance into new tools. A community museum labels a small display household pairs, and instead of long paragraphs, it shows objects in twos, cups, combs, sandals, flutes. The caption is one line: work and warmth travel better together. A local troupe revives festival steps without mockery. One dancer switches roles for a verse, holds the room steady, and switches back, no wink, no smirk, just craft. Have you ever watched someone handle a hot topic with the gentleness of moving a sleeping child from couch to bed? That's the energy here. People reclaim words too. An elder explains masintin like meets like by pointing at 2 boys who always walk home at the same pace. No speech about identity, no label debate. Just a nod that says, they fit. A radio host in Quechua jokes gently that every village has the 2 who arrive first, and callers laugh because every village does. When someone asks, but what do we call them? The host replies, neighbors, and then after a beat, good ones. It lands like a blessing. You see quiet pride in the details. A shawl woven with a small doubled motif that only the wearer and their person know. 2 men running a stall, handing change across each other, without looking their movements playing the old duet of I Lift You Steady. A woman who keeps the stories of a festival's role swaps alive by teaching kids both halves of a dance so they can feel the balance in their legs, not just hear it in a lecture. Nobody announces a revolution. They set the table for 2 and call you when the soup is ready. Tourists ask loud questions. Locals answer with calm ones. What did the Incas think about? Gets a patient shrug. And does your home run better when people take turns? The conversation shifts from labels to logistics, from theory to care. You realize that was always the point, not winning an argument, but keeping a roof from rattling loose in wind season. In that frame, tender bonds are useful in the most Andean sense of the word. They help the day hold. The loud world still tries to simplify. Headlines love, yes, no boxes. But the valley leans into both and. At a town meeting, someone speaks about safety and food prices. Someone else quietly adds that a little privacy also feeds a house. Heads nod. The vote passes. Later on, a quiet street, you see 2 shadows moving like one 4-handed person, checking latches just as you did back at the temple doorways. Old scene's new date. Before you leave, the guide takes you to a small hill at dusk. No plaque, just wind, and a view of terraces stacked like pages. People think our history is a straight road, she says, but it's stairs. You climb, you rest, you turn, and you're still going up. You think about attendants in lamplight, soldiers and road dust weavers, beating rhythm into cloth neighbors, inventing careful ways to say we without saying it. You think about your own life and who steadies it when the climb gets mean. The sun slides behind the ridge, and the valley turns that soft blue that makes everyone speak half as loud. You don't make a speech, you make a promise. The Andes would recognize. Keep the lampshare. The weight, remember that pairs are how the road gets carried. Then you walk back down the stairs feeling for the old center with each step, and it feels like the world is answering one steady footfall at a time. From temple lamps to terrace songs, you followed how Incan bonds rooted in Yanatine and Aini kept work warmth and quiet love in balance despite conquest and erasure. Paired stitches, paired hands, a paired life, that's the empire's heartbeat. Now keep your sandals on, because behind those same doors waited hush-bound thresholds, the forbidden rituals and sacred ceremonies that ruled fortune and sky. The torches are low, the drums are silent, and Cusco is finally honest with you. You step into the hush and feel the city's stones hum like a sleeping cat that still hears everything. Down the slope of the puma-shaped Capitol head, at Sacsayhuaman's spine along the streets, alleyways breathe out cool air, and you move with it, a shadow among sanctioned shadows. You pass walls so tight you couldn't slide a blade between them, blocks beveled fitted and confident, as if they were convinced of their own destiny. Once you start listening, the stones talk in a polite whisper. They tell you that by day this is Cusco, the navel where roads radiate like veins along the Sequay lines toward hundreds of huacas. By night, those lines are strings on a harp. The priests pluck soft, deliberate, never for show. You keep your pace measured like a pilgrim who knows the route but not the ending. And you follow a pair of attendants whose copper bells make the tiniest tick-tick against the hush. Behind you, the Plaza Haucaipada sits empty, the Ushnu platform glinting with dew, and you can almost imagine the day's petitions evaporating from it, promises about crops, quarrels, and marriage arrangements drifting upward to Inti. Do you carry a promise tonight? The guard murmurs without turning. You're not sure if it's an actual question or the sort of ritual line everyone knows to ignore. You tuck a pouch of coca under your tongue anyway, the way locals do when the air thins and the nerves get chatty and you taste the familiar bitterness that keeps the mind focused but not fussy. A doorway opens in the wall like a pupil widening in the dark. You're inside a narrow corridor where tallow smoke coats your throat and the floor remembers every footstep ever taken on it. This is the quiet back artery of Cusco's ceremonial heart, the path that lets you bypass the crowd and the commentary. Somewhere ahead lies Coricancha, the temple of the sun, its gilt plates veiled for the night. Forbidden here doesn't mean unraveling chaos. It means rituals cordoned off by rank calendar and breath. You're not bursting into a secret club. You're taking a backstage call time where nobody dares miss their cue. The attendants slow at a basin where water holds the night sky like a borrowed mirror. You rinse your hands and face, and though the mountain cold makes your skin protest, the gesture matters. Purification means the gods won't flinch when your name is spoken later. The priest overseeing this stage is a small man with a voice that never rises above the level of considerate advice. He checks your coca pouch, your woven sash, your sandals, and then your silence, which is the only thing that's really mandatory. You offer a pinch of ground maize to the water with a breath that fogs and dissolves. If you've ever had to turn your phone brightness all the way down before walking into a theater, you know the feeling. Same world, softer eyes. Outside, the city is a constellation you walk inside of. Inca planners didn't choose sites casually. Cusco's ceremonial geometry is stitched to horizon markers, and sunrise points to Ilapa's temper and Mamaquilla's silver attention. People like to say astronomy, and they're not wrong, but what you feel is choreography. On a distant slope, a small shrine glows, as if it were a neighbor's window left on. That's a huaca, one of countless sacred places that accept offerings. Like the Empire, accepts loyalty quietly, persistently, with a memory that never deletes files. Do you ever get the sense a place remembers you, even when you tell yourself you were just passing through, your guide gestures onward? You step through another courtyard, where a woven mantle hangs damp from the evening, a faint scent of chicha drifting from jars that will be sealed before dawn. Someone hums a scale that rises and sinks like careful breathing. Later, that melody will wrap around petitions to Inti the way smoke wraps cedar. Whether it's a noble's vow, a weaver's plea for steady hands, or a general's edge-of-sleep question about omens, each speech will be short, formulaic, and exact. The Empire likes exact. Quipu keepers, those accountants of thread and memory, stand by with cords coiled at their belts, knots waiting like commas in a sentence not yet spoken. You cross under a lintel and feel the temperature drop. Here the walls once shone with golden plates. Pachacuti himself ordered it during the 15th century renovations, though conquerors would later strip them, leaving the masonry like a bare instrument still perfectly tuned. Imagine the glare when the plates were up, high-altitude sun, ricocheting until everyone's eyelashes tried to become visors. Tonight, there's only charcoal and ember, just enough to make faces legible and intentions undecorated. The priest's fingers trace the air as if he's paging through a book that never needs binding. A woman enters with a covered basket. Coca leaves llama fat for the fire, a little powdered shell from the coast. The Empire in miniature, arriving on cue. You wait at the threshold because thresholds have a job. They're breaks disguised as architecture, forcing you to remember you're not the center of the ceremony. You're a witness with honorable timing. Somewhere above, Chasqui, those relay runners with lungs like bellows still flicker across dark paths between Tampus carrying messages that tighten the Empire's ligaments. Even while Cusco murmurs, the road network thrums, and you feel it through the soles of your sandals like bass through a floor. A priest of higher rank glides past with the gravity of a librarian who knows where the rarest scroll sleeps. His staff knocks a soft pattern against stone. 3 pause, 2, and the attendants repeat it with the small bells, bells on their wrists, hierarchy rendered as sound. You think of modern boardrooms where badges blink you past doors, or stadiums where only certain wristbands open certain tunnels. Ritual is access control, yes, but it is also quality control. If you haven't fasted, if you haven't kept the prescribed silence, If your breath still smells of street food and chatter, you wait outside. Not punitive protective. You wouldn't bring a noisy jacket into a sound studio either. The priest pauses at a brazier and pinches the flame until it steadies. He turns to the assembly and speaks without drama. The calendar has ticked. Vows will be renewed. A name will be lifted of dust. You can't help adding up the delicate arithmetic that keeps an empire solvent labor promised and received festivals aligning distant provinces, reciprocity, irony threaded through feasts that are never just feasts. The mathematics of devotion. You feel it in the way the room inhales together and waits for the first leaf to fall from the basket, the sign that tonight's dialogue has a willing listener. Have you noticed how easy it is in the dark to believe that mistakes glow? Here, one misstep doesn't bring thunder. It brings a cough, a raised eyebrow, a gentle hand turning you back to the courtyard to try again when you're measured enough to be safe among names and gold. You adjust your breath to the room's quiet metronome and step forward where vows braid power fear, and the strange relief of being told exactly what to do for a few minutes in a life that's otherwise guesswork. Night air presses cool against your skin, and the mountain gives you the simplest instruction. It knows wash first, speak later. You climb toward the water place where breath gets counted sandals whispering over stone, and every step asks your thoughts to stop jostling for attention. The basin ahead isn't grand. It's exacting two carved troughs fed by steady channels that never seem to argue with gravity. In the Andes, a spring is more than plumbing. It's a doorway the world uses to step into you without knocking. An attendant points you to the lip. Sandals off hands, cupped eyes soft. The water is alpine and absolute. When it touches your fingers, they tighten in surprise and then understand the assignment. People say purification, but the habit here is plainer. You're removing dust. Market dust. Gossip dust. The little crumbs of daytime that cling to the corners of the mind. You swish lift and rinse your face, and the cold edits your thoughts down to the useful ones. If you've ever turned your phone to Do Not Disturb, before a delicate meeting, you've already rehearsed this feeling. A young priest with braided hair checks the quiet around you, the way an instrument maker listens for a rattle. He isn't interested in reciting beliefs. He asks about preparation. Fasting kept, temper unprovoked. No half-finished errands tugging at your sleeve. In this world, readiness is half of reverence. He offers coca leaves, local green, that meets altitude halfway. You place a small wad at your cheek. Add a hint of lipta, an alkaline ash from plant stalks, and feel the familiar numbing spread. Your breath evens. Thoughts stop stepping on each other's toes. For a culture that ran runners across mountains and an empire on accurate schedules, coca isn't rebellion. It's respect for the workload. The priest produces a shallow bowl of ground maize and powdered mulu shell from the coast, a coastal word in a highland sentence. He pinches a little 3 times into the channel. Earth, sea, sky. Reciprocity Aini isn't just about rotating labor. It's also grammar to speak you offer. To be heard, you balance. 2 older women from the Axalawasi, the house of chosen women, arrive with cloths warmed near embers. Their work rarely headlines ceremonies, but everything depends on it. One dries your hands with a patience that feels like a blessing disguised as housekeeping, then steps aside without a flourish. You touch your eyelids, temples, and heart with water, a quiet map of attention. The spring has a name and a presence the locals honor without drama. People nearby talk of Tampu Machai, carved cascades near Cusco, where channels seem to listen as much as they pour. Far to the north, another memory clings to Rock Baños del Inca near Cajamarca, where Atahualpa later preferred to soak. Springs remember rulers. They also remember everybody else. Mountains keep ledgers long after empires change managers. Breath becomes the next instrument. The priest signals without words inhale until the ribs widen like a door exhale, until the quiet is the only thing left. A pinch of dried herbs smokes on a brazier with the barest smear of llama fat to coax the ember. The smell is alpine and kitchen at once. Inti. The sun will soon be courted with speech and fire. Apus. The mountain spirits receive deference by default. Water receives your quiet. Nobody gets flattered. Everyone gets included. Others stand with you, a weaver whose calluses read like a resume. A soldier with straps worn thin by switchbacks. A noble who looks newly humbled by altitude. No one outranks the spring. Actions shrink on purpose. Rinse, touch brow, touch heart offer. Breathe small moves with large meaning. Think of it as two-factor authentication for the sacred. The first factor was showing up when you were told. This is the second, proving you left the street noise outside. Someone nearby whispers a single word. Remember, and you catch only the breath at the end. Memory matters here, the way copper matters to wires. Quipucamayox. The knot keepers will later record the who and what on cords of dyed fiber. For now, the body is the ledger. The purge is not theatrical. Nobody faints. Nobody waves a fan. You're rendered ordinary in a very particular way, the way a violin is ordinary wood and string until tuned. The priest glances at your hands for tremor, not as superstition, but as quality control. A shaking hand drops offerings, stumbles over names, trips the rhythm everyone relies on. You look down and see Mama Quilla, the moon, stuttering with each ripple in the basin. Women linger on her reflection a little longer. Calendars and tides travel in family lines. A dog starts to bark far off, thinks better of it, and lies back down. The wind turns one note lower, and your shoulders answer without permission. Rules were spelled out earlier with an accountant's clarity. Avoid heavy foods for a day. Keep speech necessary. Step aside from conflict. Stay awake if the calendar demands it. Rules create a mood. Mood creates a doorway. You step through without announcing your footfall. The senior priest arrives with the hush that follows someone who knows exactly where everything goes. He touches your wrist where the pulse tells the most honest story and nods. A smear of white clay marks your forearm, authorized, not spotlighted. The attendant's wrist bells tick 2, pause 1, and the group turns as one toward the descending path. The spring continues behind you, businesslike, serving the next person with the same unwavering patience. Do you feel lighter? Not like helium, more like your thoughts set down their backpacks and agreed to carry only one item at a time. On the hillside, a tiny shrine glows like a neighbor's late window. That's a huaca, one of hundreds, sewn along invisible sequoia lines that stitch city to horizon. Even now, Runners flicker across the road network, like sparks chassis relaying small knots that will tighten the Empire's schedules by morning. You walk with them in spirit, body tuned, mind less edible to distraction, and the night approves by doing nothing theatrical at all. If this were a modern office, someone would print a checklist. Here, the list is in your muscles, and every box you tick loosens the grip of stray noise. The mountain accepts the update and says nothing, which is its way of telling you to keep going. You shoulder a small woven bundle, a mesa of offerings wrapped in a clean cloth, and follow a stony path that climbs as if it had opinions about your calves. The air thins, but it also clarifies. Sounds separate into layers you can count reed flutes far below a dog's brief protest, the polite clack of your companion's staff. The mountain ahead holds its shape with the confidence of someone who never once worried about posture. Tonight, you will speak with it, which means first you will remember how to listen. At a bend, where the wind turns a corner and decides to stay a low cairn of rocks, waits like a receptionist. This is an apacheta, a traveler's altar on the shoulder of the trail, neither grand nor shy. Exactly right-sized for the job of witnessing tired feet. You add your stone to the pile and feel the minute transaction register. I pass through. You keep watch. No announcements. No signature required. Your guide lays down a cloth, the pattern bright but not loud, and you help set out the small things that matter without bragging 3 coca leaves in a fan, a kintu, a pinch of maize flour, a twist of llama fat, a splash of chicha in a gourd. The Empire loves things that pull their weight. Everything on the cloth works double duty as nourishment and message. You breathe into your hands to warm them, and the coca leaves warm with you. The number 3 keeps showing up out here. 3 leaves, 3 pinches, because balance is easier to protect when it's triangulated. To read the kintu, you hold the 3 leaves together, convex sides up, and speak quietly in Quechua, not to flatter the mountain, but to keep your own thoughts from wandering Apu. Eat with us, look with us. Then you let the leaves fall onto the cloth, and you read what they decided to do with gravity. If 2, lie vein to vein, and 1 points away like an arrow, that might be a nudge to wait. If all 3 overlap neatly, and you can hear your own breath without trying, that might be a yes. Is it a science? It's a disciplined way to make the world's weather part of your deliberation, like glancing at a forecast before you buy tickets. Only the forecast has a personality and a slope. Your companion watches the wind in that way. Andean people do, as if it were telling a joke with a point. Huera isn't just breeze, it's a messenger. A sudden downslope gust is not the same as an upslope answer. When the cloth flutters toward the cairn, your guide smiles without teeth. He's awake, he says, nodding at the mountain as if it had just coughed politely. You offer the first splash of chicha to the stone's chala, a libation, and the liquid darkens. Rock the way rain darkens, newsprint quickly and with consequence. Somewhere below, a pair of night insects tune their wings to the same note for 4 seconds, and then stop, as if agreeing they've said enough. The landscape has a repertory of omens, and you're learning the cues. A fox crossing high on a ridge atop can mean cunning is required. A brief lick of lightning to the east belongs to Alapa, the storm deity, who reserves the right to change everyone's plans without apology. A single condor drifting above the shoulder of a snow peak, puts attention on ancestry and big decisions, and you cannot help looking for the bird because the neck hairs decide they are scouts with a job. None of this feels like superstition when you stand where weather is personality and slope is posture. The mountain speaks in the grammar of small emphases, a taste of metal in the breeze, a thinner silence between crickets, a cloud choosing a ridge, the way a hand chooses a tool. You pass the coca back to your guide, who rotates the set of leaves and drops them again, this time onto a rectangle of white ash traced on the cloth. The shape matters. It's a little plaza for the question to sit inside, a way to ask the landscape to meet you halfway. One leaf lands half on, half off the ash, as if it couldn't quite make up its mind. Your guide raises one eyebrow with the same expression a good teacher uses when you almost show your work. "We ask smaller," he murmurs. "Big questions are noisy. You break them into parcels the mountains can handle without rolling their eyes, which is to say, without sending weather to make the point for them." Burm! A pair of travelers pauses beside the Apacheta. One reaches into a pouch, pulls out a small carved stone and illa, a household luck figurine shaped like a camelid, and touches it to the cairn with a gentle authority that suggests long practice. Illas are not flashy. They're the refrigerator magnets of the sacred, reminding you what the house is trying to be good at. The traveler whispers about wool and healthy legs, and the stone being stone does not nod, but you feel the quick settle of a request made in the right size. You've done versions of this palm pressed to a stadium gate or to a stage curtain, a quick pact with luck before you step where many eyes have stared. Not every huaca is a cairn. In the half-dark glint, you make out a boulder with a groove worn along its spine, the kind people call a seat for a spirit. Elsewhere, these seats are carved into bedrock in humanist shapes, a gesture that says, the mountain is willing to sit down for a minute and listen if you keep the meeting efficient. People who study such things will tell you that the Inca mapped hundreds of these points along sequoia lines radiating from the city like ribs. That network doesn't end where streets do. Here, the lines feel like path and promise stitched together. You blow lightly across the coca, the way you'd blow dust off a lens. The leaves jump land and offer a configuration you've been hoping for, three edges aligned like a small road. Your guide exhales without commentary and lays a thin stripe of llama fat across the ember so the smoke thickens just enough to be legible. Smoke is a translator. It shows where the wind has been thinking, turns the invisible into script you can trace with your eyes. The script bends toward a notch in the ridge, a natural gate. You will go there, not because the smoke told you so, like a boss, but because everything you've done tonight convinces your feet it will be polite. You walk on, and the ground starts that dry, talk mountains like to have grit under sandalstone, finding stone. A constellation peaks between clouds, maybe the Lama Yacana, the dark-shaped constellation Andean shepherds know in the Milky Way, rather than the bright dot pictures people elsewhere memorize. It's comforting to be in a sky that doesn't need lines drawn between stars to make sense. The shadows carry equally real stories. Do you ever find it easier to see meaning in what's not highlighted in the quiet parts everyone else scrolls past? At a ledge just below the notch, you unroll the cloth again and add a small piece of spondylus shell, mulu, coastal orange, singing in a highland throat. Someone carried this from far away, because trade routes aren't just for goods, they move vows too. You offer the shell and a pinch of maize flour with the same careful wrist as before. The wind answers by softening half a note. Your guide doesn't overpraise the moment. He covers the cloth, ties the bundle neat, and nods at the ridge. The mountain has heard enough for one sitting. When people say, the landscape speaks, what they really mean is that your attention finally learned the local language. Do not breathe, first count first. 1, 2, 3. Hold. Now breathe as if the room were a panpipe and you were the note that must not wobble. You enter the hush inside walls that once flashed with gold, so bright even eyelids had work to do. Coricancha doesn't announce itself with volume. It edits you. Doorways narrow, lintels lower, and your body learns the choreography of respect, chin-down footfalls, even hands where they won't argue with the air. The floor stones are so tight, they feel poured rather than laid, and each niche in the wall is a small stage where presence sits without needing to be described. Here, the empire keeps its voice inside its chest. The Sapa Inca arrives without a drum roll. Only the quiet rustle of a mantle whose fringe is heavy enough to remind you that thread can be as authoritative as stone. Son of the sun. Intip Churin isn't a metaphor here. It's a job description with deliverables. The emperor's breath is paced by a priest counting on knuckles hidden inside his sleeve. The cadence matched to a reed tune you cannot hear but somehow remember. If you've ever prepped for a presentation and let your smartwatch nudge your pulse down to a civil tempo, you understand the assignment. Precision isn't style, it's a doorway. Objects are already waiting the way arguments wait in court. A shallow gold disc catches firelight and pretends to be dawn. A cup of chicha stands so still it could be a coin laid on water. A quipu hangs rolled like a sleeping thought against a wall. Niche. Chords dyed in quiet colors that only wake when fingers ask them to. You recognize llama fat in a covered bowl fuel for a clean flame and mulu shell coastal orange that carries sea breath up to this altitude, so the conversation remembers both shores. Nothing here is decoration. Everything has a job and a memory. The emperor lifts the cup and tips a measured splash to the ground, chala, for Inti, the polite drink offered before anyone else is served. A priest traces a small arc in the air, and you follow it to a high slit of darkness that acts like a careful eye. People who study such thing among Savaisakos say these doorways and windows hold alignments for a calendar you feel, rather than recite solstices, kissing a stone-edge equinox, light unfurling along a floor seam like a ribbon. Whether every alignment is precise, or the priest simply knows when the room wants to act like a lens, the result is the same. Time behaves itself here. Do you have a room at home where the morning strikes one wall like a promise, and your day organizes around that stripe without you admitting it? There is a murmur of words. You're not allowed to echo formulae that keep their edges by staying indoors. You catch fragments. Punche de aini, reciprocity, sumak, good, beautiful. The Sapa Inca's voice is not loud. It is correctly weighted. A keeper of chords steps forward. The Quipucamayak, and with the modesty of a good accountant, unrolls the textile ledger. Knots register harvests and labor herds and obligations. Tonight they also register promises. A thread is pulled. A knot checked a new one, cinched with the gentleness you use when tightening a strap across something fragile. Numbers do not praise, but they remember, which is sometimes more powerful. Fire is coaxed, not lit. A priest touches ember to a braid of dried herbs with a fleck of fat, and the flame obliges like a well-trained pupil. It isn't incense choked, it's careful. Smoke climbs in readable lines, and a second priest watches it the way a sailor watches a flag. Toward the east dawns business. Straight up approval. Side swish toward a dark niche. The mountain spirits want a word. You're reminded of reading a loading bar patient knowing the last 2% can take the longest because that's where meaning packs itself tight. There are other sanctuaries inside this complex, spaces dedicated to Mama Quilla, the moon, Ilapa thunder lightning, and to the wandering brightness people elsewhere call Venus Chaska. The doors are plain from the hallway, but their thresholds are laws. You don't cross them without a calendar reason. An attendant passes with a small bundle you recognize from the road wrappings for a transportable huaca, a revered object that travels when the empire needs to bring authority to a province rather than drag a province to authority. It's clever sociology disguised as piety. The sacred goes on tour, so the logistics don't break. A golden garden once stood in the precinct, stalks llamas, even little farmers cast in metal, a royal metaphor made three-dimensional. Conquerors carted it away, but the idea hasn't moved. Abundance is a language, and rulers speak it fluently by making plenty look inevitable. Tonight, the metaphor is smaller, but no less pointed. A little trench of glowing coal, a triangle of coca leaves fanned just so, a cup that knows exactly when it will be tipped and when it will rest. The Sapa Inca speaks again, and a boy, with the steadiness of someone who has practiced not being a distraction, steps forward, carrying a woven mantle. He trades it for another ritual exchange scaled down to cloth, because reciprocity isn't only about food and labor. Clothing can carry the promise of care between center and edge. In later years, a mestizo writer named Inca Garcilaso de la Vega will remember these exchanges, translating memory for an audience far away. For now, the only translation you need is the way your shoulders settle when ritual fits the room like a cloak. Someone near you breathes too quickly, and an attendant materializes with the efficiency of a stagehand to adjust their stance, to remind ankles to be toes forward, to rethread the quiet. Mistakes aren't punished with spectacle. They're trimmed before they unravel the hem. The worst penalty here isn't a strike of thunder. Ilapa has better things to do, but to be escorted outside and left, to wait among the ordinary noises until the room forgets your name for the night. Eggle from memory is tidier than an argument. A bell note touches the air one, then a pause that feels like a hinge, then two. The emperor tips the cup to his lips and drinks with a stillness that is almost aggressive in its insistence on control. Chicha has work to do. It binds guest to host ruler, to ruled breath to breath. You taste your own mouth. Go dry in sympathy, and let your tongue find the last edge of coca for composure. Ritual time isn't slow, it's exact. That's why a minute feels elastic. How many meetings have you left thinking nothing happened, only to notice later your calendar and your wallet disagree? The Quipu keeper ties one final knot and lifts the cord half an inch to confirm tension. A priest shades the flame with his palm, so smoke straightens like a posture corrected. The emperor's mantle settles, fringes whisper, and a line of attendants begins to move sideways, a crab walk that keeps faces aligned to the sanctum even while exiting. It's not performance. It's muscle memory trained to keep attention where it belongs. Your own feet learn it quickly because the room is persuasive, and the stones which survived gold leaving are happy teachers. Do you feel briefly like a bead sliding along a thread that was there before you? And will be there after counting more than you can list and losing nothing to noise. Courtyards breathe before dawn, and you step into one that smells of cool clay, toasted maize, and the clean sweetness of wet yarn. This is an Akalawasi, the house of chosen women, quiet from the street and relentless within a place where skill turns into statecraft without ever raising its voice. Walls rise simple and pale. Doorways make rectangles of sky. In the corners, tall-necked jars urpu lean like attentive listeners, mouths stoppered with braided grass. A senior woman, Mama Kona, glides past with a spindle in one hand and a look that tells you time is a budget and every thread is an invoice. You follow the rhythm drop spindle. Pushka, whirling wool, singing in a whisper, fingers teaching fiber to become line. The Akula's chosen women were selected from across the provinces for quick, hand-steady temperament and the kind of focus that makes distractions give up and go find somebody else. Some will be dedicated to Inti the Sun. Some will maintain the moon's calendar for Mama Quilla. Some will brew sacred maize beer chicha without a single misstep in temperature or timing. Some will be married later to nobles or to men the empire wants to keep in its good graces. The house trains for all of that, the way a conservatory trains musicians. Scales first, masterpieces later. Weaving is the headline here, but it isn't showy. You sit near a backstrap loom, anchored to a post, and to the weaver's own body, a practical truth in cloth form. Tension is personal. She leans back just enough to tighten the warp, and a pattern begins to climb diamonds that seem to breathe stair steps that could be read as mountains from a bird's vantage. People call these tokapu, when they're on noble tunics, geometric vocabularies with meanings you don't declare to tourists. The threads are fine, as some people's patience. This is Cumby Royal cloth, the kind that can ransom a grudge or seal a favor without anyone saying the embarrassing parts out loud. Have you noticed how a really good gift ends arguments better than a really good speech? A Mama Kona taps your wrist and steers you to the brewing courtyard, where clay ovens give a patient heat and the air tastes faintly like biscuits thinking about turning into bread. Dried maize jora soaks in big bowls, then warms, then rests, then warms again. No shortcuts, no heroic flourishes. Chicha for festivals and vows must be clear bright and exactly itself. The cullis move through the steps with that competent hush you hear in good kitchens and good backstage crews. Vessels are washed. Ladles, counted cloths boiled, and what's left over is given with courtesy, so the economy of the place leaves no untidy corners. Reciprocity. Aini shows up here as neat storage. The house teaches more than tasks. You watch posture lessons that look like dance and turn out to be diplomacy. How to set a cup in two hands and not look hurried. How to receive a visitor without collapsing their dignity by accident. How to maintain a quiet that isn't fragile. The Mama Kona's voice carries just enough authority to reach where it needs to go. Steady breath, she says, and you remember the counted breathing in other rooms. The Empire has a shared metronome, and everyone learns to use it. Sun virgins, those dedicated explicitly to Inti, keep a stricter rule. Vows resemble the mountain's idea of patience, not a human's. The point is not drama. its availability to sacred work. Breaking rules here isn't a tabloid headline. It's a breach in a system that tries to keep luck from evaporating. The penalties, you are reminded with a glance, were historically severe. The reminder isn't theatrical. The reminder is a perfectly folded cloth square laid where a messy one used to be. Near the inner wall, a young woman sings under her breath, a melody that keeps time for her hands as she twines a border cord. She is not famous. She is perfect at this. Later, her cloth may leave the house to clothe a statue, to wrap a diplomatic parcel, to drape a royal bench, to arrive in a province like a handshake from far away. Inca Garcilaso de la Vega, writing long after, will describe the care given to royal textiles and the pride woven into them, memory translating itself for another audience. But in the courtyard, you don't need a future narrator. You can hear competence in the way the heddle stick clicks. A visitor arrives an official with the discretion of a good tailor, and the courtyard edits itself. A mantle is presented deep cochineal reds that took a mountain of tiny insects and the patience of many women to summon. The official doesn't gush. He nods, folds with exact hands, and allows the cloth to become the empire's sentence in another conversation somewhere else. Cloth moves power more quietly than soldiers do. Quiet is a feature. You can ask a gentle question here without offending the walls. Why weaving? Why brewing? Why vows? The Mamakona answers in actions, not treatises. She shows you a spindle half full and asks you to hold it for a count of 4, then 8, then 16. The weight grows not dramatically, but undeniably. Weight is how the state stays in one place, she says, smiling, because she knows it sounds like a riddle, and also because she knows you understand it already. Cloth is a store of labor proof that time happened on schedule and at the right temperature. Do you think of the oculus as cloistered? The word fits and doesn't. Many remain within these walls for years. Others are sent outward with purpose, paired with a governor placed in a provincial shrine embedded where ritual needs a spine. The house is a school that never prints diplomas. Its graduates become the connective tissue between sacred calendar and daily bread. They are not a chorus kept to the edges. They are more like first violins near the front, counting quietly, tuning the room by example. A young weaver beckons you to try one line of weft. She places your fingers on the shuttle and waits while your nerves repeat everything they've learned about clumsiness. You pass the shuttle through, beat the line with a soft thunk, and watch your mistake sit there stubborn. The weaver does not sigh. She unpicks 3 motions with the speed of a seam ripper that never tears, and the cloth resumes pretending you were never here. In a world where some errors get archived forever, this mercy feels like a little domestic miracle. How many rooms in your life fix your errors so neatly you forget them? On a bench, a row of ceremonial cups. Karos dries after washing their painted sides, dim until oil will wake their colors. Along the wall, baskets of dyed skeins are arranged like a season chart indigo dusk. Moss green, llama brown, the rare bright of mulu orange when shell powder is worked into something that will travel. The organization is not fussy. It's simply too competent to allow fussy to stick. Evenings here end the way good rehearsals end, with someone counting tools, someone covering vessels, someone checking that the fire's last thought is a safe one. You step back into the courtyard, and the sky is a bowl the city set out to cool. A bell speaks twice. The women disperse without scattering their footsteps even. You realize you've spent hours in a room where power never raised its voice, and yet got everything it came for, which is a lesson most rooms could use, even if they don't like being told so. You wake to a city holding its breath, and the cold feels ceremonial, as if the morning shaved itself and put on its good mantle. Inti Raymi is written into stone and calendar alike. The year bends here, and everyone bends with it. For days, the fires have been dying on purpose, hearth by hearth, as if the Empire were shutting down lamps so dawn won't have to compete. Your lungs remember the counted breathing from other rooms and keep time without being asked. Delegations arrive along the Kapak Nyan like threads returning to a loom. Coastal faces ruddy from altitude highland governors wearing mantles that say, "I brought my province with me." Llama trains jingling with bronze bells too polite to nag. You can taste the city's mix. Chicha sweetness waiting in sealed urpu, the mineral clean of morning stone. A hum of pututu, conch horns warming their voices against palms. If you've ever watched a stadium fill before a final and felt the air choose a single purpose, you know how the plaza sits. Haukaipada, a big listening ear. The Ushnu platform, squared, ready to translate feet into meaning. The Willik Umu high priest moves with the same economy you've seen in weavers and accountants. His hands count without fingers. The Sapa Inca appears in a mantle that lets the sun practice on him early, a crescent of attendants editing the space so nothing awkward trips the eye. People who prefer spectacle won't find it here. The drama is in precision. The last hearth smoke thins out by agreement, and for a moment, Cusco smells like nothing, the way a room smells when it is waiting to become something else. A low chorus of siku panpipes begins disciplined breath, turning reed into river. Wankara! Drums answer with a heartbeat that never goes theatrical. A sound you can walk to and not spill a cup. Dancers step in patterns that look simple from 3 rooftops up and complicated from 2 steps away. Tunics flare fringes, confess their hours, and bare heels kiss dust with the kind of regularity that convinces gods they're dealing with adults. You find a rhythm between your ribs and the plaza. It's nice to borrow a city's pulse when you're not sure where to put your own. Here's the hinge all fires out new fire in. A bowl of tinder waits on the Ushnu. The priest cradles it the way a librarian cradles a banned book carefully without gossip. Sun mirrors have been polished with the focus of people who don't get the luxury of close enough. You've seen gold pretend to be light. Today, light pretends to be gold. A beam tests the mirror, walks across it, and lands in the tinder like a quiet yes. No cheer, just the correct intake of breath from 10,000 people who know what a schedule feels like. Do you remember a time you rebooted a bulky device and the screen came back brighter than you admitted you needed multiply without the electricity? The first flame is coaxed, not bullied llama fat dry twigs, a hush that keeps wind curious rather than rude. The Willik Umu feeds it with the patience of someone who has seen haste burn promises to ash. When the flame steadies, runners are already poised to sprint in civilized bursts, each carrying a brand to a neighborhood hearth. It's the Empire's yearly software update, except the changelog is warmth, and the patch notes are vows. The relay goes out in starbursts along sex lines, and you imagine kitchens blinking back to life in tidy sequence, grandmothers lifting lids with the same reverence they give to babies and gossip. Offerings arrive in order woven cloth that holds labor, like a savings account. Baskets of maize that smell like sun stored in kernels. The first pour of chicha for Inti that darkens the earth the way good news darkens a mood toward rest. A black llama stands steady beside its handler. The records speak of omens read in what the animal carries inside. Weather harvest a mood report on the year ahead. But the ritual you see emphasizes care, a hand stroking fleece, a whispered line you don't repeat. The Empire speaks in tidy columns. It also speaks in the quiet between a handler and an animal that does a dangerous job without knowing the word for calendar. You notice who does not fidget elders in mantles that remember earlier winters, akalas, who brewed the chicha as precisely as they wove your expectations generals, whose sandals have known more switchbacks than gossip. The plaza doesn't hold spectators. It holds participants scaled to their task. A Quipucamayak stands near the Ushnu, not to count applause, but to knot what was promised and what was done. Later, when someone says,